Recording is on.
Welcome to DXdao governance discussion for Wednesday, October 26th, 1500 UTC. We will first take a look at the agenda here while I share my screen. A lot of windows open. Close these. Okay, there's the agenda. As I said, we got some proposal roundup here, and then just a couple of different items. Some of these won't take long, more of just kind of like check-ins, restructuring check-in, maybe just a little update from things we did over the last 2 weeks in Colombia and some discussions there. DXdao call schedule. I actually just made a post about this about an hour ago, just thinking about how we want to be structuring calls, maybe looking at those, the scheduling of those there. Maybe a bit on the SWPR soft landing update. I don't know if we have anything to update there, Keenan, but we had talked about that, and I know things are winding down this week. And then two items that are related but different. So one is the second one, I guess, is exploit disclosure. DXdao governance. This is from Dave, and finding the vulnerability. This has been a big topic of discussion the last couple of days, so we'll get to that. And then the first item here is the registered new contribution reward scheme, which is a proposal that was just submitted on Mainnet from Augusto, which is actually a fix to the exploit disclosure. So we can talk about that, those separately there. And yeah, I'm told I should be going to DXgov.github instead of the other one. So we'll go there first. There we go. Yeah, so starting with the proposal roundup on the agenda, we actually have, say, no live proposals, or so no boosted or pending boosting proposals right now. You'll notice there are actually two active proposals here. One I just mentioned, this register new contribution reward scheme. Oh, that did not. And that we'll get to in a bit. And then this one is just like a weird proposal that we noticed was submitted a couple days ago. It's for minting a very, very small amount of rep to a random address. It's not boosted or anything, but always good to be a little vigilant here and see what those are. So that's it for Mainnet. And as I said, we'll get to this registered new contribution reward discussion in a bit. Switching to Gnosis Chain, we're kind of slowly inching back after the holidays here. So there were a couple different ones, actually just starting with maybe the multi-call one, because there were a couple different ones that have been going on related to the buyback. There's more about closing down the old buyback, in the sense we have to get the WETH out of the GPV1 relayer. You actually have to first wait for the orders to expire to be able to do that. So we have some of those there. And then, yeah, we have two CalSwap orders that have been going through, I think now for 3 weeks, and those have been going through pretty well, directly executing that, cutting a lot of the overhead out there. So that's the multi-call one. And then the current live proposals for the contribution reward scheme. Here we have George Lopez. This is one ending on October 18th, and this is actually George's last worker proposal for DXdao. So it'll kind of worth kind of taking a look and seeing that. And then there's an infinite hackathon travel grant expenses here. This was kind of, I think, voted on by Melanie and Augusto, kind of running through that. And so, yeah, it's good. I always like to see when proposals mention certain people, and then they're voted on by those people. And even when those people have ENS names, so it's very easy to see that in the vote here. It makes it clean for others, clean governance, I should say. Yeah, and then we have Ether Labs, a rep claim for July and August. This is for Venki, aka Ether Labs, and he's done his payment proposal separate, and this is for the rep claim there. And then next up, we have Caney Fork worker proposal for October, November 2022. This is the first of two. Posted this earlier in the month here, so you can take a look at the things to hopefully accomplish this. These months here, and feel free to vote on that if you so desire. And then we have also just boosted the last day here. We have a Space Inch development work for September. And then, this is actually still before the restructuring phase 1 proposal passed there. So this is payment for that. And then, just boosted recently is AliQ contributor proposal. I believe the second half of August and September, and then the first half of October and November there. And then, actually also we have now 2 from Wixie contributor proposal here, and doing some work on SWPR and DXstats. So those are the boosted and pending boosted proposals now. I wasn't sure if there was any questions on that. This is actually not boosted. I meant to boost that, so that's a to-do for me. But any questions on Gnosis Chain proposals live that are boosted, pending boosting? Cool. Restructuring check-in, just kind of wanted to touch on it briefly.
Chris, real quick. Can you just, the Arbitrum, I know that you actually included here and there's nothing boosted or pending. Can you just open it up in DXvote? Like, I actually, given the stuff we learned at DevCon and the vulnerability and stuff, like, I'm pretty sure not a lot of people pay attention to Arbitrum 1, but Arbitrum 1, our base that's there, which I'd say is it's kind of a makeshift base right now, but like, it actually owns SWPR token and it actually owns SWPR there. Like, if people don't pay attention to it, it can be attacked. So like, just including all of our real bases, like actually making sure everyone looks at them on this weekly governance call, I think is important. Like, clearly, if there's no proposals happening, okay, we can just check that box. But like, for it actually owning a product and owning tokens and stuff on that chain, I think we should just get people probably paying more attention to it, and maybe making it a real base that's more like the Gnosis Chain base would be one of the steps in that direction, to make sure that people like pay more attention to it. And maybe even people could do contributor proposals on Arbitrum instead of Gnosis Chain, and then it's like becomes an actual working base more than what it's been treated as, like, which was very obviously SWPR product focused. And this could happen across more chains as we expand, like maybe Optimism and other chains that we might want to be and have real bases on. But like, I've always not liked that this is this kind of weird fake base, but making it a real base when the time is appropriate, and maybe that's where maybe we're waiting for the next version of DXgov or whatever. But like, if it actually does real things, so like making it a real base seems appropriate to me. Anyway, that's just like a side note. But I know some people look at it, but many people don't look at this, but I still think it's really important to.
And I think just what you said, at the minimum, I think we should just, because we're already on DXvote, we're going over this together, we're scrolling through it, like, I can always try to at least shift to Arbitrum there and then just look at them quickly on this, even when there is no active ones, because I think it is definitely a good habit to get into. And then I think there's like the broader discussion of like where we're doing governance activity, like, because there obviously is some overhead to doing these things, kind of a governance attention there. But Arbitrum is still, I don't know, I think Arbitrum has like more TVL than Solana now, or something like that, where you can kind of see how some of the L2 space is kind of playing out. So I think we still have to be very mindful of some strategic opportunities there. And even, you said for contributors, maybe people would like to get paid there because there's more yield there or something that they could access with their tokens. So realizing that it does have like an overhead to it, but maybe something to explore in the future. Cool. Yeah, and then just a couple of different discussion items. I don't want to spend too much time on all these. And Keenan, if you want to jump in here for restructuring, I was just going to kind of say that I had presented something at the retreat, and actually also on this call last week on some initial ideas, really on like the budget and maybe this idea of like an advisory council or bringing in some additional folks to provide some report card elements. And so that's something I'm still working on this week, maybe hoping for a post hopefully by the end of the week. And then Keenan, I know we've got some other things kind of with phase 2 here that we're itching to, but I think like keeping the momentum going from the retreat, and then also kind of putting a goal, I think, of getting a lot of these things ironed out by the end of the year. And I think like the big thing when we think about with budgets is, I think everyone involved, most people on this call, even those that are not full-time contributors, will be like, this will be a time suck because people will be putting these things out there. There will be debates about what these things are, but I think that's like all part of the process that we need to do. So hopefully, we'll be posting something on this, but I think the bigger thing is kind of preparing for this process over like the next couple months. Keenan, I don't know if you had anything else to add.
Yeah. Hey guys, sorry. The voice loss has turned into more of a sickness now, so I'm not going to add much more to that. That was good, but just as a quick, I guess, look ahead to the rest of this week, hoping to get a little bit of a recap out today, unrelated to the restructuring. But I think contextualizing kind of everything we went through is good. Chris, your post is very good as well. And then next, kind of having some info on phase 2, a soft off-chain consensus of some kind, hopefully for tomorrow. The original signal proposal for phase 1 points to Monday, this coming Monday, as a submission date for the signal proposal. So hoping to have a kind of period of off-chain consensus between then and there. And of course, it's a soft target, not to reuse soft landing, but obviously if more time is needed to discuss this beyond what we had in person, there's plenty of time to work with that, I think. And then the other thing is the swapper soft land I want to quickly talk about. I think it's next on your agenda. But I think the goal is to give a bit more context and have a proposal ready for tomorrow. And this is when the next campaigns are to start. But there will be no campaigns, of course, coming out of the gate. Instead, we'll point to this kind of governance. Maybe we don't have a snapshot ready right away, but some kind of governance process to point to people who are like, hey, where'd the yield go? I don't understand. And then we can kind of rally swapper troops behind a kind of direction for that. Of course, we'll probably come up with this like 3-month idea of a soft landing where we have 3 months of kind of light campaigns on targeted pairs. And kind of roll that into whatever the future of swapper is. That's the idea for that, from my perspective right now. I'm not sure if you have anything else to add, Chris.
No, that was good. I had it in split up so that we could like get Keenan in different bites, but it's always good just to get one big morsel in there. So yeah, thanks for that. Cool. Yeah, and then next up is DXdao call schedule. This is just a post I think we've been talking about a little bit and kind of various different things, but I just really wanted to maybe gather conversations and discussions on this in terms of things to move forward. Obviously, we're coming off the phase 1 restructuring proposal that had some kind of signal in there about different calls and looking at how we can be more efficient with them. Then even coming back after Colombia, when a lot of the calls were put on hiatus. And then, of course, our favorite time of year here at DXdao, daylight savings time, is coming up. So that is a time when everything changes a little bit. So maybe a good time to think and talk about this. And so I think part of the only thing post I had here and was thinking, like, meetings do take people's time. And I think it's important that when we're having meetings, we're focused on on what is efficient about like, well, do we really need to meet about this? What is kind of taking everyone's time here? What is worth it to be able to do that? And then also that we have this maybe reliance on weekly meetings, but sometimes it can be better to have like a almost like larger, more important bi-weekly meeting or a monthly meeting where you actually are gathering people together to talk about things or present things there. So anyway, just some ideas here, and maybe others feel free to share those now, or maybe commenting in the forum here. But I think it would be good to maybe have a re-look or a re-examination of our call schedule, and in a way of maybe communicating that. The other thing I was just like kind of wondering here at the end is, maybe we need a new calendar tool to coordinate this if we're going to be trying to schedule things in the future. There's some things you can do in I know both Discord and even also Discourse or DAO Talk for scheduling those. We also could think about, well, maybe there's a standard format for calls that we want to follow in terms of like reporting either to the forum, or maybe this is like a chance we put in some more like automation in there. So yeah, just some ideas maybe to get us started.
Yeah, the point about if you have a company and you have and you got an email and it's known their emails and stuff, scheduling calls, because getting things on people's calendars is one of the most important things to organizing a call and figuring out the time. The reason why this regular call's been a good way to check in across different squads and topics is because you don't have to schedule it, because most relevant people will be there at that time, which makes that benefit. But then, yeah, to people's points, maybe then you have calls when you don't really need to have calls, or you
also in my case
Oh, go ahead.
Sorry, I was just saying that I like the fact that the calls are organized on the same hour every week. Well, it's not, it doesn't have to be like the same week, but the exact date to have those calls is something that sticks like to my schedule, because in my case it's past work hours, so I'm just have my time reserved, and my family knows that I'm on those calls, and there's no problem. And I know that each week, like on Wednesday at 5 p.m. my time, that's the time for the DXdao. But in case of like whether they should be organized every week, I'm open to also like participating them every 2 weeks. So I don't believe that they must be like organized every week, but I really find them useful because they serve to as a kind of update. Because I don't always have like opportunity to follow all the discussion on the DAO Talk and on Keybase and also on Discord. So this those calls are, in terms of governance, they are really helpful, and to provide the sum up of what was happening for the last week. So
yeah, that's a really good point. And like, by very strategic design, there is this basically 2 hour, maybe 2 or 3 hour, but really 1, 2 or 3 hour window that an organization, which we say global, but it's mainly Europe and US. So the extremes of the US, and we're going to have to deal with this with daylight savings coming up, but like the extremes of Bulgaria and Israel, and then the West Coast of the US, there's a very specific window when you can actually, Argentina's in the middle. Argentina is easy because it's in the middle. It's the extremes why we pick call times, and why we have to actually move call times by an hour or so. And this doesn't include Asia. If we had to include Asia, we're like fucked basically. And so we still think about maybe there's another time to include Asia, but these windows are very specific. So even if we didn't have every weekly call, we could have bi-weekly. But still, if you were going to do one-off calls, you often need to fit your one-off calls into these windows, which, depending on who needs to join the call, is often going to be in Europe and US. So keeping those windows in mind when you're doing one-off calls is also important. And so, yeah, the consistency of the weekly time has always been beneficial for many people. But yeah, we can definitely alter the way it's working, but keep in mind that those windows are still the same windows that everyone's going to often need to use, basically. Yeah. And the other issue is because we don't have like one big calendar system, you don't always know if someone else has a call at that in one of those 2 available hours. They might already have a call about Swapper or about DXgov or something. And so being aware of when those calls are lets you easily make call for another, one-off call at a time that is not already taken by another call or a squad call or something. So it's not easy, but it doesn't help not having a shared one shared calendar system. Like not everyone here even knows how to invite people to calls using email addresses, basically.
Yeah, just reading Augusto's comment, what about a weekly digest of squad calls? I think that's like another thing to think about. Like, yeah, how can we document these things better? So it's not just you have to participate in the call, but you can kind of say, okay, what was discussed on that? And like, then I can figure out if I need to follow up or do that. So maybe we're thinking any call that is going to be a public call that is like DXdao something, or a squad call, like has an agenda and some notes, just quick notes after it. I know that kind of creates some more work there, but then that could then be bundled into a weekly digest of the squad calls because you have little kind of summaries of each of those.
Yeah, I think a good summary, maybe not weekly, maybe it can be like bi-weekly, right? Where every 2 weeks we share what happened on the calls, highlights of each call. Let's say today we discuss something super important, or we discuss something important. For example, the exploit discussion, the exploit disclosure. So it was mainly discussed on this call. This was the agenda, this was the notes, and this was the link. So if you want to go deeper onto that conversation, you go there. Like, let's say on a developer call, we had a guest from a project who presented something, or we had a very interesting discussion like we had yesterday about ENS hashing algorithm and how it registered the ENS records and how subdomains work. Okay, let's highlight that, and we can add it on the weekly digest call. On the weekly digest notes or something, I don't know. I think weekly digest or something that can be good. Of course, someone will need to take responsibility on this, on kind of gathering and yeah, asking for the notes and highlights of each call. And even more, it would take, for example, for me, it would take more energy to have a weekly developer call with notes and an agenda set and everything. Also, the agenda for the weekly developer call is always the same. We do a roundup of the projects, and most of the time oh my god, most of the time we came up with issues or the squad present issues or some technical difficulty that they found, and they present something interesting, and we go deeper into the conversation. So usually the interesting topics just happens on the technical level on the weekly developer call. That is what I see from there, which I think is also super important because it's the only technical call that we have in DXdao, and well, that is at least how it is designed so far there. Melanie?
Oh, yeah. So, I mean, I also support less frequent and more structured calls. I like the idea of a biweekly call in which we all followed a similar format where, the squad is required to post an agenda in the forum. It could also give others in the community like an opportunity to join a specific call if there's like an item on the agenda that is of specific interest. The idea of like, doing a recap and writing notes and posting it on the agenda forum post is a good idea. I'm just worried that we wouldn't be consistent. Like some squads would consistently like do a recap and others wouldn't. So I just wouldn't want that to be like a requirement that people don't quite follow up on. But I do like the idea of creating more structure around the calls and then having them less frequently, and then posting the agenda. So yeah.
Something to strive for.
Yeah.
Stuff. Yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, I think like the governance call is like a good example. Like Chris always like posted an agenda. And
I used to do notes for like the first year. I would like do notes. I think this is, I don't know, it was still recorded, but yeah, it does take time.
Yeah, absolutely.
But part of it is also like when I go back and look, I'm like, oh, this is what we discussed in the governance call, and like having to highlight the important things. Then that actually sometimes like almost automatically creates a to-do list of like, okay, well, I need to focus on these things. So yeah, it can be a helpful process to go through.
Absolutely.
And I also think it's a good opportunity. The other thing is like just in terms of like structure and like Augusto, I completely agree in terms of like taking time out. I also think it's an opportunity for other people to contribute to calls in different ways. Maybe not just the people that are hosting the calls, that we can have someone who's responsible for notes, someone who's like taking that. But anyway, this is good discussion. I just wanted to kind of get this started and maybe some other ideas in the forum as we kind of flesh this out, because I think there's a bunch of things here, from like how do we have calls that are efficient to how do we communicate them to should we be using new tools for doing that. So yeah, let's keep the discussion going in the forum and cool. Just moving along here, because I want to we've got let's start first with the register new contribution reward scheme. So I think we can maybe start with knowing that this is in relation to the thing we're going to talk about in a second, the disclosure. But Augusto, maybe you can kind of just walk us through what this is, and maybe there's actually even one also now on Gnosis Chain.
Yeah, basically what we deployed on Mainnet and Gnosis Chain is an scheme is a contribution reward scheme with a change on a function that validate the proposal parameters. And what we are requesting here are the number of periods to be 1 and the time of the period, which it was always 0. We always use 0. But if you set a time there, let's say, I don't know, a day, you're going to be able to claim your reward on a day. But we always use 0. So what this change is just that. What this smart contract changed is that requiring 1 period, 1 reward period, and to be claimed instantly. We deploy those schemes on Mainnet and Gnosis Chain. I created a proposal to register the schemes with the same voting parameter hash that we are using on Mainnet and Gnosis Chain, and the same permissions. So it will essentially like it will continue working as just as the contribution reward that we are using, right? Exactly the same. But if you try to submit a proposal with more periods, it will just fail, right? So eventually the patch that we have on the UI, it won't be able to render anymore because the fix will be on-chain, on the smart contract level. And yeah, that's essentially a fix. I think the next step is to create submit a proposal later there to test that it works correctly. We already, on the pull request where we did the changes, we added tests, of course, and we tested it and the test ran. So again, this should work as normal as any other contribution reward. And then when we feel that it works and we are happy with it, we can unregister the other one. The one where you can submit with multiple periods. And that's it. That was the technical fix.
Can you just kind of walk because I think I got it here. So I see what you're doing here. So this is the new contribution reward scheme. This is what you deployed, or someone deployed a couple days ago, with the small change. And then this is the DX controller contract, right? That you can check to see what this scheme is registered with. And so we do that where we need to take the avatar, which I copied here, and then we take the new contribution reward scheme that you deployed and put that here. And then oh, that didn't work. Yeah. And then this should be up.
I mean, yes, since it's not added yet, you won't have
this is the one. This is the new one.
Yeah, that's the old one. That's yeah, the way the voting parameters works. The thing is that this is something weird because this is a global scheme, which means that I have to manually register the voting parameters on the scheme before setting the parameters from the controller. Because the way that these schemes were designed is to be used by multiple avatars.
Right.
Actually, the only one who is using that is DXdao.
So you were saying the schemes or the controller? The controller is unique to DXdao.
The controller is unique, yeah, but the scheme is like a global scheme. Again, not something that we will use in the future. Hopefully, actually, I can't wait to stop using all these smart contracts. They are very old, not written by us, and they were designed with a different structure in mind. So this is very hacky, but it works. And again, this is just going to be a new scheme. Is the contribution reward, and we are going to test it, and that's it. Going to have access to the same funds and everything. Oh yeah, DAO stack is what happened on DAO stack is funny. Seems like DAO stack went down after this vulnerability was disclosed. Yeah, we haven't heard from them. Yeah, so that is crazy. Like, I mean, we knew that DAO stack was going to go down eventually. I don't know if they are going to bring it up, but now we can see the value. I know that DXgov is very hacky and it might be hard to use, but we can still continue operation on the governance level if DAO stack went down. This was always a plan. So at least now, I know it's not ideal, but the idea is why always to have DXgov as an alternative, which we can use it as an alternative in case of emergency, which I don't know if this is qualified as an emergency, but event DAO stack went down and we have to continue operating, and we can do it on DXgov.
Cool. And
I cannot imagine. I mean, what about the rest of the DAOs that are working on DAO stack? If any other DAO is using DAO stack, what's happened with them? Like how they can continue operating on chain? Crazy, right? I mean, we can go and take a look. Actually, I'm just thinking about it. But if the DAO is operating, they don't have a way to follow up the proposals that are happening. I can go and submit a rogue proposal to start taking over their treasury, and I can start submitting rogue proposals. At least we have DXgov, and I believe Chris and Dave are monitoring everything, so we are safe. But yeah, kind of crazy. I think there is no other DAO, but if in case they were, they will be on their own.
okay, let's move on to exploit disclosure, DXdao governance from D Labs. I don't know if we need an explanation, but maybe we should get an explanation from the man himself to kick things off. So Dave, maybe you can kind of kickstart things here, and then we could talk about it and move forward, or discussions, go over the discussions that have already happened in the forum, and maybe where to go from here.
Sure. I'm in an airport lounge and I have noise cancelling headphones. And last time I was on a call, they kicked me out because you don't realize how loud you talk with the noise cancelling headphones. So I'm like one headphone off and gonna try and do this anyway. But yeah, I mean, essentially this, I mean, I'm sure pretty much everyone read the forum post. This happened back in June, where I just noticed this like periods variable in the contributor reward scheme, and ended up submitting a proposal that actually exploits it, just to see if like this was reflected in the UI, but it was neither reflected on DXgov nor Alchemy. And so the second step is I actually just went to Tenderly and see if the functionality was actually implemented at the smart contract level. The Tenderly simulation is also in the forum itself, and surprisingly it did. So what this actually means is that anyone can submit a proposal and just add a hidden multiplier to what they're claiming. So if you're claiming, well, the most efficient way to exploit this would just be to claim a small amount of rep, like a Discord boost, and then set like an insanely high multiplier, like 100,000. This is an unsigned integer 128. So someone more technical than me can, I think it should be like over 1 million. You can set like very high multiplier because you can only put positive integers in an unsigned int. And yeah, so like you can multiply, it multiplies everything. So your rep, your ETH, your ERC20 tokens, your fake DXD tokens, which is another thing I found. But of course, the most efficient way is like once you have over 51% rep, you can just, the DAO literally becomes an EOA, right? Like you can instantly withdraw and do anything you want with the funds. And yeah, so that's pretty much, sorry for my voice, but yeah, that's pretty much like the gist of it. You know, like what I also just went over, it's just like enforcing at the smart contract level that you can only ever have one period with the 0 period execution time, which means that each proposal is like unique and can only be executed once, and it just kind of removes this whole concept of multipliers from the scheme. Yeah, and you know, of course, like if you think about like if someone else would have found this exploit and actually exploited it, what it means in practical terms is, of course, they could have been able to withdraw all funds from the DXdao treasury, which would have probably also like crashed the DXD and SWPR tokens. And yeah, I mean, there probably wouldn't have been a way to get it back due to the fact that we are like truly decentralized and don't have like some kind of backstop to like freeze a proposal or do anything, right? So yeah, I'll mute myself and see the reaction in the lounge to my 5-minute talk.
Cool. Thanks for that. I don't know if people have reactions, questions, comments. Yeah. Yeah, I guess the current state is, so this was discovered several months ago, and we just kind of went over what the fix is in terms of how we can address this at the smart contract level, and that's kind of being fixed at then. But I think then there's the second idea of like, well, what does this disclosure mean for DXdao security, and like how should we be rewarding, I think, Dave, for finding this disclosure, and how does this kind of set a precedent for what other security disclosures will happen in DXdao in the future? So maybe that's where some of the other discussion turned in the forum below. Let me get to the, yeah, so we kind of had the fix there, and then, yeah, I think the discussion on what to do going forward maybe is there. So those that maybe comment on the forum or elsewhere want to chime up here. Kenny, it sounded like you were winding up for a big speech. Cool. I can read kind of some of the other comments of, so I guess the question of how to reward this so we don't have a bug bounty program that I think this would fall into. We have started engaging with HATS, but the contracts that HATS covers does not cover the DXdao contract itself. And so then the question is like, how should this be dealt with? And so I think there are questions in terms of like using, maybe you look at a percentage of funds or something like that. And then I think there's also the point here, I think from, this is from Connor here, that, Dave is a full-time contributor and the worker proposal of this period included QA testing and DXvote. So I think that the discussion and maybe the consensus that I got from reading the other post is that, like, even if this is, given that this is something that should be rewarded, there is maybe some delineation that should occur between someone that is a full-time contributor to DXdao and someone that is like not. And when I think of like bug bounty programs, I think one of the reasons you have numbers that are high is because you want to encourage people to be looking at and examining the contracts or like following along that. They have some like kind of appeal for that. So part of that number is that. Whereas when you have a full-time contributor, part of them are already kind of looking at these contracts or kind of aware of that there. So there is something there. So maybe it's like looking at a percentage of the funds that were at risk, and then maybe something different for it being a full-time contributor. And then I think, just to echo something that Luigi said in the Discord that Connor is quoting here, is that, you do get, well, if you are rewarding contributors for bug bounties, then does that kind of create maybe some incentive to do something in development that you could then discover later? I don't know, just some kind of interesting comments here. Sky had talked to a couple different people and have kind of been figuring these things out. I'm not sure if there's something specific you want to say there, Sky. And then, I guess actually these three proposals were the ones that did like mention numbers of some sorts, or 4 right here. So Adam was saying 5% seems fair. Connor said 104K is maybe the starting point. Sky said that one community pays out 200K for critical bugs that were paid externally. And then John here says, maybe the retrospective contributor bonuses for shipping are actually like the model that should be based on, which those are like, I think they were 20K there, but this could be a multiple. It could be higher than that, but that would be the starting point there. And then, some good points, I think, or quick takes here from Spicy Soup, if you want to take a look at those. And so that was kind of a little summary of the thread. I don't know if maybe I can now read the comments box here. Yeah, Connor, go for it.
Yeah, I think the only other point that I wanted to highlight from my post was the delineation, I think, is important. I think that like there should just be something different for external people versus internal people, but also even within the internal group, I think it's a difficult situation when developers are like even more attached to these contracts and these processes, where if a developer found this on their own like product, then I can't see a world in where they would be sort of considered for a similar bonus. So it's sort of like, how do we set a precedent here? I think with Dave's case, it's not an issue of trying to discourage any future malicious actions, but I'm just thinking more broadly, if we set a precedent here, then how it can be moved forward, and if there's sort of an advantage to being a non-developer over a developer in terms of expected payout over a career at DXdao, then I think maybe we potentially have an issue in that regard.
Definitely. I mean, so I think it sets a precedent, is maybe, or will be referenced going forward, both in terms of this is DXdao security practices and is a way of maybe encouraging and incentivizing like additional disclosure in the future, because DXdao is a responsible security actor, but it also, will have some effect on the internal.
So I have a question. How do we, I mean, obviously we allow anonymous people to be able to report and exploit, and we would be able to reward someone totally anonymous, right? That's how you do it. So how do we protect ourselves from like this internal/external thing? Like if anyone internally finds something and they know the reward is much higher, or maybe you will not get any reward doing this as an internal. Obviously, you go anonymous and just say, "Hey, I found an exploit." Like, how do you protect from that? Because it doesn't matter what we set up, which guidelines we set up, because you can always report it as an anon.
Yeah, I mean, I think I'm not sure if I can answer that, but I guess I'll try since no one else. I mean, I think every like this is something you deal with every like group dealing with a lot of money. That's why the question is like every hack just an inside job? So I think that's really hard to avoid.
Yeah, I think we should always expect things to be found, regardless internal or external, and just have good enough reward so people actually report it. I mean, the important thing is the funds to be safe, and obviously to have a good enough process to not have exploits like this. So yeah, I don't know. Maybe Augusto could maybe comment on this and how we will not end up. I mean, maybe also this is not related for this here, but I think some of the comments are like we're talking about internal/external. Any point after this thread, I would say any exploit found would always be reported as an external person. In my opinion, it's much easier. People don't get pointed out, and I think from what I felt, at least they've got a little bit of finger pointing and a little bit negativity towards his side, even though he found this exploit. People saying that it's part of his job, etc. Like, to not make it complicated and get more reward, just say you're anon and report it. So I think we incentivizing with all of this discussion, we're incentivizing things to be anon, to be external. Always doesn't matter if it's internal findings or not.
I mean, I would just push back on that. I don't think I ever said, like, my comments are probably the closest to referencing Dave's job, and I have never said that it's part of his job. I just said that he, as a contributor and working closely with DXvote, he had business being in and around those contracts, whereas a third party wouldn't have been paid to even be looking at those contracts. So I think there is a difference there. And that's sort of all I've said. I don't think I've ever said that it's part of his job, if that's what you're referencing. But I think from what I've seen, my comments are probably the closest to that. So apologies if that's not what you're referencing, but
it was actually not you.
Okay.
Another squad lead at DXdao actually told me this face to face. So
okay, my bad. But just to clarify my comments as well anyway. But okay, cool.
Hola. For me, it's kind of hard to evaluate the reward amount. That is something definitely very, very hard, because I feel the same that was Conrad was talking, right? So I feel the same as Conrad said. I think part of finding the vulnerability was it was Dave's job, who it wasn't Dave's job, but his usual work activities on DXdao put him in a spot where he found it, and he made an honest decision and and lawyer to DXdao disclosing it. For example, he's not a technical person, right? He's not involved in the development process. So in case that happened, in case I was the one who found it, I would just go there, make a fix, and that's it, right? But this wasn't under their responsibilities. He could have exploited it, right? Anonymously. This is possible. So I think something that we are learning from here is that all future disclosures or bounties or exploit that we are going to be receiving, we should encourage them to be anonymous. And what happened here, this reward is going to send the present. I think the reward, the same reward that we will give to an external person shouldn't be applying here just because of what I said, right? That Dave is a member of this organization, and we should reward this honest and loyal behavior, of course. But we should also, again, consider that it was part of Dave's job and in DXdao what took him right onto the path of finding this. So we should be clear, like if we think this is an external reward, this is what DXdao will pay for an external anonymous report. Okay, this is what we are paying today because he's a member of the organization already, and part of what brought him to find the vulnerability was working at DXdao. So that is my take. I don't have any strong opinion here. I'm just very happy that this was fixed. We made on the development side with Ross, and I think John was still involved at that time. Mistakes on how we should approach it and fix it more quickly, right? I spoke about them there, and I see responsibility. But regarding the reward, I think we should decide on how much we will pay to an external anonymous contributor, and from that we start deciding how much Dave is going to receive as a reward. Maybe the first proposal that we submit is not going to be the one being chosen, or we can create a pool based on that, right? This is the reward for an anonymous contributor, and from here we can go lower and decide on a reward amount for them.
Cool. I would just like to push, I think just having the 10% number out there, I think there needs to be a little bit more source backing on that. I think the Wintermute situation is very different because you're negotiating after they already have the funds. So they're kind of negotiating that. Most bug bounty programs that are pre-reported, I think using that as a standard would probably be a better model. I mean, it wasn't 80 million, because if you just drained all the funds, you would only get 40 million because you couldn't have sold the DXD for that market cap amount. Because if you had all the DXD in the world, of course, DXD would go to zero because you took all the ETH from the treasury, and then all you'd be able to get is the ETH that's in the current swapper pools.
Again, I think we should decide on how much the pay will be to an external contributor first, to someone that submit this anonymously, and to someone that submit this anonymously, right? So we should decide on that first, and then from there on how much we should reward it. And yeah, then Wintermute, that was a hack that already happened, and it wasn't a negotiation, right? So those funds were essentially already lost.
Yeah,
it is similar, but yeah, it is different because it's a negotiation where the attacker and the the entity that was attacked are in different positions that now that what we are.
I think just like, to me, like, I think this is because it was reported and not exploited, right? I think like the Immunify is one of these programs that has that, and you can see the different bounties that they have here. And I think these are pretty sizable, but this is also, I think, literally for like maker DAOs, like for DAI itself. And then even the same thing, like these are, I think Olympus, which is probably maybe a good comparison. They have a bounty themselves there that's, I think it's like 3.3 million, and I think their treasury is about like 300 million there. And yeah, this one, Smart Tribe DAO isn't really around yet, but so I think looking at bounties as opposed to ones that have been negotiated after exploits, I think are the right manner. Because if you want to negotiate after exploit, then you have to deal with like a bunch of legal concerns too.
Just on Sid Mead's comment in the chat about what legal recourse would DXdao have, I think that's sort of irrelevant in the fact that like everyone who does exploit contracts, they're doing so with the full possibility of any legal recourse. So I mean, it's sort of similar situation in that sense. Like if you decide to exploit it and keep the funds, then like you're at the mercy of anyone's potential legal recourse. As for who would claim DAO's ownership, I think if 38 million was on the line, I'd put my hand up. That's for sure.
You would just go after the hacker, right? And it'd be tough. You wouldn't be able to, but I'm just saying, if you exploit, there would be kind of other repercussions with it. That's why it's just like a very different negotiation.
Especially with Tornado now not really being as anonymous. The anonymity set is much smaller. I don't know how you can say it doesn't make sense. Like there are ways to find funds. It might not be successful, but that's the balance of probability risk that you're taking. So I don't know what you're meaning by it doesn't make sense.
Yeah, I would say it is good for us to not signal to exploit. We will give bigger rewards versus reporting. I mean, obviously, Chris, what are you saying? Like you can negotiate better if you have exploited. I mean, which is true, right? But we don't want to incentivize that. I would. I think
it's
I'm not an expert in this.
An incentive. I'm just saying, like a fact of life is if like someone has $10 million and you're negotiating with them, like you're in a worse negotiating position than if you have.
It is true,
That's
but
just
we also decide. We can decide here where reporting something in is incentivizing enough to not actually exploit. There's a lot.
The only thing I'm talking about here is like the model and framework to be using to determine like the percentage. And I'm just saying, I think a better framework to be using is one that is a bug bounty program because it was reported, and that's how bug bounties programs work, rather than using an exploit as the precedent.
So if we could turn back time, Dave goes anonymous, actually goes through with all of this, exploits it, DXD crashes to the ground, people panicking, and then Dave could have done like a negotiation and said, hey, I want to keep 10%. And we probably agree on that, right? This is not good for DXD holders, right? I wouldn't like this to happen.
I think it's also important to say, okay, the fact that it's coming up a lot that, okay, Dave could have done it this way, but Dave, why didn't you do it that way? And then we can go from there in terms of, okay, what benefit has Dave thought that he is gaining by not doing it that way? Because if it was clearly a superior decision on all fronts, moral, ethical, financial, and career, whatever, then he would have done it that way. So what is it, Dave, that drew you to doing it this way? And then you can kind of see the context of the intangible benefits of doing it this way versus the anonymous way as well, rather than us kind of keep saying, well, he could have done it that way, so it should just be the same as if he did do it that way. Like, otherwise he would have done it that way if the outcomes were the same, right?
Yeah. To be honest, I didn't even think about it. Like, I think I reported it to GovOps within like half an hour of finding it. So, and I'm happy I did it that way. Like, I don't regret it or anything. Like, it's fine, you know. But of course, I understand it will be difficult to come to a number, and because we're a DAO, it might probably take a long time as well. But you know, I don't know. Yeah, I don't know either myself. So.
I am afraid that it will, like, I don't think we're going to decide this today or get some soft consensus today, but I do think it's important that we get a resolution to this, because it sends a signal, right, in terms of responsible disclosure. But it is like a tough thing to figure out. And I think it does kind of underscore how having some process or structure in place of this beforehand in place would help alleviate how we kind of adjudicate this now post hoc.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I guess the amounts so far are like, I think from 104, I mean, John said 20K, but he didn't say what multiplier. So it's like a function missing a variable. Other than that, I guess it's ranging from 104 from Connor's suggestion all the way up to 1.8 on Adams, but I think that's too high as well. But yeah, I also don't know. I guess we will never reach one, but we don't, right? Like, I don't think anyone like one is happy with, so it'll probably be like multiple proposals. Until how, I don't know if any other thoughts, but I guess that's the most important.
Yeah, we need a Schelling point, right? Isn't this precisely like the number on that? It's tough. Yeah, I think looking at a couple, comparable, if we can find other specific examples and using that is the only way to kind of eventually get to a number. I don't know. Yeah, as I said, I don't think we'll get to it on this call right now. I think it's very important that we do this. And I think even as the discussion is ongoing, that we make sure we like fully commit to DXdao paying out this reward, as it says a lot about its credibility in the security space there. So unless there's anything, I know we're over time here a little bit, so I wanted to leave open any last thoughts or comments. Oh, there we go, Gusto. Take us home.
Yeah. Well, yes, we won't decide on a number, all of us. That's definitely not going to happen. We have a wide range of options. What I will propose to move forward with this is that go to the topic, go to the forum, propose an amount that you consider as a just reward for this, based on what we discussed today. Explain your reasoning behind that, and later we can do a poll with all that data and with all those options, and a proposal can be submitted. Of course, if an option wins on a poll, right, and it doesn't mean that it's going to pass, right? Exactly. They are not very reliable every day, but it can get us a sense of where things are going. So you can still, let's say that a poll won for 500K, right? You can still submit a proposal for $2 million. I don't think it's going to pass. You can submit as many proposals as you want, and later try to find again of course, Dave's interest is to get as higher reward as he can, and I think any one of us will be in that position. And I encourage all of us to have empathy on the position where Dave is in right now, where he submitted a vulnerability that he could have exploited, but he didn't. He still think he did the right thing, and now we are here trying to send a public precedent, because this is going to be a public precedent of how we treat anonymous vulnerabilities. So that is my proposition. Go there and propose a value, the reason behind that, and later we can create a poll or whatever, just to get a sense or where most of the people stand up, and then we create a proposal.
Yeah, maybe this is an opportunity to look in the polling stuff. I feel like it would be better if we had a little bit, and even like, I don't know, restricting who gets to vote, as long as it's like people that have been profiles for like 6 months or something. I don't know. Anyway, that's a separate idea, but yeah.
I would take a temperature with DXD holders too. Obviously, they don't have a real vote, but they can voice their opinion with the amount of DXD they're holding, right? With the snapshot, I would do that. And maybe not everyone is involved and knows exactly what's going on, but I think a temperature check there would be good. And and something more measurable with maybe rep holders.
Yeah.
So yeah, maybe a snapshot vote on with DXD holders first, and yeah, move from there.
Yeah. Well, first Dave will have to leave the lounge. Hopefully you'll make your next flight. You have another flight, or you're on your last leg? Oh. Yeah. Nice evening. I guess you'll be a little, I guess you're jet lagged the other way. I don't know how that would work, so hopefully you won't. Yeah. Cool. Awesome. Any last thoughts before we part here? Awesome. Wayne, I think you can hit the recordings. I keep closing it instead of